Bill Welychka joins us. And first of all, it's nice to have you back on the show.
Oh, it's always nice to be invited anywhere. Thank you, guys.
Okay. But, I'm looking through all the material on you, and we've got the memoir you and I talked about first. There's a new memoir. Then there's a movie where you sort of play yourself and a documentary. You are fully living my company's dream of being on multiple platforms.
It's funny because I don't necessarily like to look back. I'm a little nostalgic, but lately it's just, people want to talk about the past, and I recognize that, and I'm humbled and I'm blown away by that. And if anyone has questions, I love to answer them and talk about the past. But yeah, the memoir was in 23, A Happy Has Been, and a lot of the second edition talks about what happened since that book's release until now. So a lot has happened, and the book tours and the comments I was getting from so many people. And so I added a lot more stories that people brought up that weren't in the first one. So it's a lot longer.
Well, let's talk about some of those stories then, because first of all, I'm always fascinated if people can write more than one memoir, because I don't think I have enough material for a single memoir. Jeannie Becker, I think, is on her sixth, but what's in the new one?
A lot more stories about artists that I'd forgotten about, that people brought up. A lot more interesting stories, a lot more funny stories, more pictures, of course, and just it brings it up to date. Again, talking about the book tours, and you never know what you did 20, 25 years ago would make an impact. You're just going through it, you're interviewing rock stars for a living, traveling around the world, and then fast forward all those decades later, and you talk to people who were impacted by some of those interviews, or remembered those interviews, or were bringing up interviews that you had forgotten about. And the comments were just, again, it blew my mind. They were heartwarming. And I felt that some of those comments needed to be expressed and talk about nostalgia and how important it is, and talk about what much music meant to a whole generation or two, and to Canada, and to its contributions to pop culture and to the music industry, because it's not there anymore.
Do you think you had and have an interviewing technique? If I were to ask you how you approached an interview and how you would conduct one, did you have a style?
It's a really good question. I think, looking back at much music in terms of VJs, I was never the cute. I was never the wacky one. I was never the fashionable one. I was never the political one. I think what you saw was someone who loved music and loved telling a story and loved engaging, hopefully liked entertaining. And my goal was always, to make the artist look back on that day. Maybe it was a press day. Maybe they had 5 or 10 interviews that day. Look back at our interview and think that was a really good time. I like that guy. It was also important for the viewer, if you were a fan of that band, to have enjoyed it, or even if you didn't know that artist, to have enjoyed the interview as well. And of course, to satisfy my own curiosities and conversation, because inevitably, depending on the interview and the marquee value of that interview, I would turn that and edit it into and produce an hour special. So I needed to get stuff as well. But I think the bottom line throughout all of it for me was just to get a good, memorable interview. And I think anyone who tells people's stories for a living, you included, that is a goal, is to make it as compelling and entertaining and as interesting and unique as possible.
Yeah, I refer to my own style as guided conversation, actually. So
Mm.
very much do have a style. And I'm be curious about your thoughts on something that I often encounter as an interviewer, which is sometimes you're interviewing somebody who has no interest in having a conversation.
Being interviewed.
Other times you're talking to somebody who's just being shameless and trying to dominate the conversation. But in your own experience, the good and the bad in terms of the conversations you had.
Well, it's interesting you talk about a guided conversation. That essentially is the most important word in that, is a conversation. I'll watch interviews where it was a question answer, almost like an interrogation, where there was no back and forth, there was no give and take. It was just stilted. And I've always tried to stay away from that. I always like the idea of a conversation. And that means you go into a situation with maybe 3 or 4 questions that you know you want to get out there. However, after the first answer, it can go this way, it can go that way, it can go this way, and it becomes a ride. It becomes a journey. It's fun and it becomes unscripted. And those lead to some great moments. Those lead to some surprises that I didn't see coming. The artist didn't see coming. And to me, those were always, it was, that's where it becomes an art form of an interview, is because you don't know where it's going to go. A painter doesn't know where he's going to go with it. Not that I'm describing myself as a world famous painter, but you know what I mean. And yeah, and sometimes you might talk to an artist who might have done 10 interviews that day and they're tired and they've heard the same questions over and over, or you might have had someone that had a bad day and you realize if you've talked to them 2 or 3 times that they're not like that, that you caught them on a bad day one time, and you realize, well, you can't take it personally, you just move forward. And more often than not, I can look back and think of well over 5,000 interviews, there might have been a couple of times where I don't think it was the best, but a pretty good track record nonetheless, I think.
Tell us about Still Alive in Kingston.
Well, when the first book came out, a local filmmaker, Jay Madaw, read it, a rough draft, and he wrote a script based loosely based on the book, in terms of a national music journalist moving to Kingston and trying to recapture the magic of years ago and trying to move back to Toronto to jump back into that world. When I say loosely based, he's taken a lot of creative liberties. Yes, I used to be a national broadcaster in Toronto interviewing rock stars, and then I moved to Kingston. And so he sort of used that as a launching point where I play myself. And the thread throughout the film, and this is what I love about it, is in the process of building a demo reel, interviewing real Kingston bands, showing real performances, because Kingston has had a long, beautiful tradition of fostering amazing musicians, as we all know. And so the film explores that. It explores redemption. It explores reinvention. It's a comedy, romance, and it's big. There's like a big wrestling scene, a big community gathering of thousands of people. There's a big scene on a yacht. And so it premiered at the Kingston Canadian Film Festival in February, sold out the Grand Theater. And it was, I'm not an actor, but we got through it. He's a great director, and he had this knack of saying after a delivery of a scene or a performance, he'd say, "Okay, that's good. Give me 30% more." So I sort of knew what he, and you do it, and you give him 30% more, and he goes, "Okay, perfect, perfect." So yeah, what an experience. I think it's going to be hitting the festival circuit. He has plans for it for the rest of the year, and it was a great experience. I love Rob Baker from the Hips performance in it. He plays himself, offering me life advice in that way that only Rob Baker can deliver. And yeah, it was just a beautiful experience. And what an opportunity to sort of play myself in a comedic way, because I don't take myself seriously.
And then there's 299 Queen Street West, the documentary. And you joke about being a has been, but I sometimes find it staggering to be in this complex and, I mean, the building.
Mm.
And I mean, it was a revolution in television and in pop culture. The people who worked in the building were young people, many of them untrained, and they were famous. And you guys were laying the track for everything that was going on. And now, of course, I'm stunned if I run into somebody in the building.
Well, yeah, 17 years in that building, greatest times of my life. And of course, doing this, what I thought was the best job in the world, especially if you're a music fan like me and passionate about broadcasting and about creating television. And yeah, like I said earlier, you don't really know how important your work is until you're removed from it years later and you can look back and realize, yeah, we did some pretty amazing things. We did some groundbreaking television. And it starts from the top down. Moses with his visions, Denise Donlin, director of music programming, some amazing interviewers like Christopher Ward and Erica M, and Steve Anthony and Michael Williams and other people. And that, it was a legacy that cannot be replicated anymore, cannot be duplicated, sadly. And what's funny now is a lot of filmmakers with documentaries know about the library. And Bell Media has slowly digitized all these old videotapes and have saved them to a digital format. So they'll never be, unlike videotape, which wears away, the oxides wear off, that tape is gone forever. And so a lot of filmmakers are harnessing that library. And every now and then I'll get an email from someone, oh, I saw you in that Marilyn Manson documentary with an old interview, or I saw you in that Bon Jovi documentary with an old interview. So I'm glad all that stuff is being seen. I know Netflix has ordered an Oasis interview, and I love Oasis. I've done a lot of interviews with both brothers, and I'm just wondering if the library was pillaged for that, and I'm hoping it was, because these interviews do deserve to be seen. And I know there's an appetite for it. I've put some stuff up on my YouTube channel of some specials that I'm proud of, and they get thousands and thousands of hits. So there is an appetite out there, I think, for people to watch music television, compelling music television still.
Bill, thanks a lot for this.
Oh man, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for the interest.